millennium is sweeping from Europe and Africa across the Atlantic Ocean toward Americas.
CNN's Millennium coverage looks back and looks ahead as the 2000 timeline sweeps another 1,000 miles westward.
Portugal's Azore Islands and the tiny nation of Cape Verde off Africa mark the new millennium this hour.
We'll look at how New Year arrived and where it's headed as CNN's coverage of Millennium 2000 continues right now. In London, they're still partying, reveling, and talking.
At New York City's Times Square, it's 4 hours to go until a security-conscious crowd of over 1 million watches the famous crystal ball drop.
In Washington, at the mall, they're getting ready at the feet of Abraham Lincoln.
And in Mexico City, a fiesta planned in the Zócalo, Mexico City's main square, including mariachi bands and a lot of people.
Good evening.
We're excited to be here. I'm Judy Woodruff with...
I'm Bernard Shaw. Happy New Year to you in past New Year's time zones and those still to come.
It is midnight right smack in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean, but in 1 hour, midnight will touch the Western Hemisphere. It has been an extraordinary 15 hours since the first place on planet Earth, the Kiribati Islands in the Pacific, celebrated the turn of the calendar. And in those hours, 5 of the 7 continents have rolled over to the new millennium with fanfare ranging from the non-existent in Antarctica to the wildly celebratory in Seoul, New Delhi, Moscow, Lagos, Cape Town, Paris, and London.
And in 1 hour, as you indicate, on the Western Hemisphere, we're going to be going to Brazil. The people are getting ready there. They're getting ready in North America, Halifax, Greenland, Boston, New York, along the East Coast, Caracas, Rio. Everybody is poised to party as the hours shift.
But you know, Bernie, for all the excitement to come, there are few spots that can match the splendor of the party thrown in London town.
That was really something.
Where CNN's own Christian Amanpour has been standing watch since well before Big Ben struck midnight. And let's go to Christian now.
Judy, not only splendor, but at the risk of sounding chauvinistic, the British claim that universal time is right here and that the millennium in this planet does not start until midnight here in England on Greenwich Meridian, Greenwich Mean Time. And they promised the biggest and the best celebration in the world, and everybody says that the fireworks that we saw about an hour ago as Big Ben chimed down the midnight hour was quite spectacular. Huge fireworks lasting 15 minutes, 40 tons of fireworks went into the air. We can watch and listen a little bit about what we saw then. A river of fire, an illusion of a wall of fire rushing at the speed of sound all the way from Tower Bridge to Vauxhall Bridge. Now, we're not so sure whether we actually saw that, but we certainly saw 15 minutes of the most spectacular fireworks that we've seen ever. Big Ben chimed down the midnight hour. Many people were worried, observers were worried, whether Big Ben would suffer the Y2K problem, but of course it's a mechanical clock. There's not a single computer chip anywhere near Big Ben, and that went off without a hitch. Some 2 million people, we're told, jammed each side of the River Thames to watch this Millennium Spectacular. If the River Thames was the site of Britain's street parties today, then where I am right now at the Millennium Dome, that was meant to be and has been the centerpiece of Britain's Millennium celebrations. It has been built to great fanfare and great expectations. It kind of looks like a UFO, I suppose. If you were sitting in space, you might think the Earthlings had built a UFO. Inside, There was a spectacular celebration of dance and music and song. The rock anthem, All We Need Is Love by the Beatles, was sung, and a new version of the British national anthem was sung. The Queen was inside. She opened it officially. And there was the faintly hilarious sight of her. Well, here you see her lighting the Millennium Beacon. She tripped a sort of laser switch, and the big beacon in the middle of the Thames lit and sparked beacons all over England. And now, at midnight, the Queen joined hands with Prince Philip, her consort, and the Prime Minister, Tony Blair, and sang Auld Lang Syne. Now, the fact that this went off without a hitch was a great triumph for the British government, and particularly Tony Blair and his ministers. Britain has been calling this the most spectacular show on earth. They promised that it would be quite an extravaganza, and they have also called this celebration Time to Make a Difference. Britain said that it was in a unique position to make a difference, and Tony Blair has been speaking out about Britain being a beacon for the world. And certainly tonight, the Millennium Dome went off without a hitch. It was built on time. Everything inside seemed to work just like clockwork. We're joined now by CNN's Chris Burns, who was at the River Thames, alongside all those revelers at the big London street parties. Chris, what was it like?
Oh, they'll turn it back on there.
Well, that's not Chris Burns. Some glitches, but not too many. It was great, great spectacular down by the River Thames, where, as I said, some 2 million people, according to British police, jammed the riverbanks to take part in the big street party. We saw scenes from all over London. We saw Trafalgar Square, which traditionally is the center of London's New Year's celebrations. They were going to freeze it, they said, to make a giant ice rink, but that proved impractical. And so the celebrations and the People Party did, in fact, take part at the River Thames, and Chris Burns is there right now.
Well, yes, Chris John, in fact, police are telling me here that this street celebration, at least along the Thames, is the largest they've seen since VE Day. That was the celebration of the end of the Second World War, so more than 50 years, probably the biggest party along the Thames in 50 years. And it still goes on, as you can see. The revelers are still at it, and the concerts go on. The concerts, 50 different bands have been playing for the last 10 hours now. They'll be playing for a couple more hours, right into the new millennium. This is the last of the show that has been going on for the last few hours, starting, Christian, as you said, with the beacons, and later on with the wheel, the Millennium Wheel that has been opened up, just inaugurated this evening, a 40-story tall Ferris wheel that's going to be, after the glitches are out, they'll be running it sometime later in January. Back to you.
Well, Chris, I see you having an umbrella over your head, the first British rainstorm downpour of the third millennium. Not so auspicious. Nonetheless, it was not enough to dampen the spirits of the people, because all through the fireworks, not a single drop of rain fell, even though the weather people were predicting that it would. Chris was saying earlier that there had not been crowds like that in London since VE Day. And let's just perhaps take a moment just to reflect on what this country has endured this century. More than any other country, or as much as any other European country, it suffered the devastating effects of 2 world wars, and yet it was also the scene and the center of great resistance and the center of a triumph of freedom over tyranny. Winston Churchill, the great British wartime prime minister, was chosen by British people as the most significant person of this century, Bernie.
Christian, I love Ferris wheels. What's going to happen with Britain's Ferris wheel?
Well, it was a great disappointment for all those people who thought they were going to go up in that Ferris wheel. It takes about 400 people, and because of a last-minute safety hitch, it couldn't take the invited guests tonight. It was meant to turn around when Tony Blair nonetheless tripped the switch, but it didn't. We don't think that it even turned around. We're assured by the sponsors that it will be fixed, and as soon as possible it will start going around and taking passengers. Let's wait and see, but there are many disappointed people over that, although British Airways, the sponsor, has promised them that they will all get a ticket to wherever they want to go, anywhere in the world, and they were all apparently hosted on board a barge by the Ferris wheel tonight for their Millennium celebration. Bernie.
Christian Amanpour in Greenwich, England, thanks very, very much. What a day it's been, what a night it's going to be, and what a tomorrow.
And as we've been noting throughout this day, Bernie, this day not only extraordinary because we're changing the calendar to a number with 3 zeros, but because there were 2 pretty important news developments today. And of course, CNN keeps an eye on those all the time.
Indeed. As the new year arrives, there are no significant Y2K disruptions to report to you so far. But there are other major news events this day, including a surprise announcement in Moscow. Russian President Boris Yeltsin resigned from office. He handed over the reins of power to his Prime Minister, Vladimir Putin. In a speech to the Russian people, Mr. Yeltsin said the country needed new leadership for this new millennium. Before leaving the Kremlin, Yeltsin turned over the secret codes needed to launch Russia's nuclear arsenal. Presidential elections are now scheduled for March 26.
Meanwhile, it was an emotional homecoming earlier today in New Delhi, India, just hours before the new year began there. Thousands turned out to welcome back 155 freed hostages of that hijacked Indian Airlines jet. They arrived from Kandahar, Afghanistan, looking a bit shaky but relieved after the 8-day ordeal that spanned 5 countries. The hostages were freed today after India conceded to the hijackers' demands for the release of 3 jailed Muslim separatists. The hijackers fled the aircraft with an Afghan hostage. An Afghan official says the entourage is being shadowed. Passengers say they spent most of their captivity blindfolded, repeatedly threatened with death. CNN, as Bernie, as we all know, began tracking the New Year's arrival 15 hours ago. We've been watching that line move across around the world at a speed, I guess, of a little over 1,000 miles an hour if you count from the equator.
And if you're just getting home or if you're getting dressed to go out, pause for a moment while we take some time to show you some of the worldwide celebrations on this extraordinary day.
Folks, you are watching now pictures coming in from Kiribati Island in the South Pacific.
This is an ancient ceremony going on Millennium Island by the Micronesian people who live there. The Micronesians are from the very small islands in this Pacific area. The claps are part of their chant, and the song that they're singing is a song asking for unity in the new millennium.
And they apparently have it, because they are now unified, and they're all together dancing and chanting, and it is now 2000. It's January 1st, the year 2000, on the island of Kiribati. And you're now seeing the pictures there, the first pictures of the millennium.
And now we want to take you to the Chatham Islands.
The ceremony will feature songs, and it will feature a greeting by one of the elders of the Moriori community. The Moriori, the original inhabitants here, almost all wiped out in warfare with the Maori tribe in the 1800s. And then a beacon will be lit at the stroke of midnight to welcome in the new year.
The celebration indeed has begun here in Auckland, New Zealand. People are now enjoying the moment, enjoying the passing of 1999 to the year 2000.
The boats are out in the harbour. There are some 5,000 to 7,000 boats on Sydney Harbour at the moment, with 250,000 people on board. That's in addition to the 1.2 to 1.5 million gathered around Sydney Harbour now, those boats honking their horns as they watch this magnificent display literally right over their heads.
The New Year in Tokyo. What you just heard was the ringing of a massive bell that's behind me, a bronze bell cast in the 1670s. It will be struck 108 times over the next hour and a half, every 50 seconds, to ward away the evil desires of man.
드디어 새 천년이 밝았습니다.
Quite a celebration on the streets of Seoul. It's been very crowded here, this really marking a new millennium, a lot of the hopes for South Korea to regain some of its economic strength.
We are looking at the famous Hong Kong skyline. Authorities here were saying that they were expecting about 1.2 million people to be out on the streets tonight. So there's a sense of optimism and sense of hope here that perhaps the year 2000 will be a good year for everyone here.
Right at the stroke of midnight, Chinese President Jiang Zemin lit a flame. It's called the eternal flame of the Chinese people, and it's meant to represent 5,000 years, nearly 5,000 years of continuous Chinese civilization.
Happy New Millennium! Happy New Millennium to all of you!
As you can see, the sky lights up at midnight in Bangkok, Thailand, as they celebrate a new millennium.
People here talking about their aspirations. They say they want a better India, they want a more prosperous India, one in which there's less poverty, and most importantly, people wishing for peace.
Most of the people in Red Square right now, as I've seen, are mostly young people. And many of them have brought the Russian flag to Red Square. The fact that they also came, young people, with the flag shows that for them too, on the edge of this new millennium, this is a patriotic moment.
The significance of these structures, the ancient civilization that emanated from Egypt itself, the fact that Egypt is celebrating its 7th millennium as the world marking on the Gregorian calendar celebrates the year 2000, it makes this a key location.
It's been an amazing night here. The fireworks are still resounding through the air in Bethlehem's Manger Square. But at the very same time, and just a few moments ago, the Palestinians released 2,000 doves, white pigeons, symbols of peace, into the air. At the same time, they were setting off fireworks, and it was as if it was opening day of dove season in Georgia.
Midnight has come to Paris.
Millions of ooh la la's there.
Exactly. You know, we're going to, Bernie, we're going to use these words, probably overuse them all night long. Incredible, extraordinary, but what the pictures we are looking at, they do take your breath away.
Yep.
We're going to take a very short break. When we come back, you're going to see pictures of New York City, Times Square, where the clock is counting down to about 3 hours and 45 minutes from now. And we're going to take you to Washington, D.C., to the mall, where tens of thousands of people are gathered. You can see them there. President Clinton leading a cast of dignitaries.
But as we leave you, let's go back to midnight over the pyramids in Giza.